It's time for the Texas Perspective on current news and events. A man who calls it like he sees it, without the normal political correctness you may have grown comfortable with. This show is not for the faint of heart or easily offended. Chances are you will learn something and along the way get to hear some great music from bands you may have missed. The doctor is in, and he will see you now.
Well, I guess we better get on with it.
The doctor will see you now.
Well, good evening, Beaumont. Glad you guys could be with us here. And I want to get right down to the news. Well, first of all, there is a nationwide recall of chocolate. It includes 8 products that could be contaminated with salmonella. The FDA announced the recall of Spring and Mulberry's date-sweetened chocolate bars on Monday. A potential salmonella contamination was flagged after a routine test by a lab. The recall initially only included their brand's mint leaf chocolate bars, but now it affects 8 types of chocolate bars. The Earl Grey, the Lavender Rose, the Mango Chili, the Mint Leaf, the Mixed Berry, the Mulberry Fennel, Pecan Date, and Pure Dark Minis. So if you're a chocolate eater and you've got any of those chocolates from Mint Leaf chocolate bars, well, don't eat them. Return them to the store where you bought them, and they will be replaced. This is particularly important for children because children they can die from salmonella. So keep all that in mind. Now this. Meanwhile, President Trump, through Marco Rubio, is planning to deliver $3 million of aid for the Cuban people in the wake of Hurricane Melissa, which happened back in October. Cuba has questioned Washington's motives, and they're a little upset about the fact that since they're going to go through the Catholic Church, it might be difficult for the dictator and his leaders to skim money off the top. But that's why it's going through the church. This is our hemisphere, said the president after the operation to capture Maduro, and you know American dominance in our hemisphere will not be questioned again. Vice Foreign Minister Carlos de Cosio later decried comments on X as apocalyptic threats and said that Washington failed to comprehend support for the Cuban government. Well, I think most of the people in Cuba don't support the Cuban government. Have you ever wondered why you have so many beautiful classic cars in Cuba? It's because you can't buy a new car in Cuba. All you can do is try to keep the old ones running. Cuba collapsed the economy. They have widespread shortages of food and medicine. And this is what happens in a communist dictatorship. The only people who really support the communist dictatorship, of course, are Democrats because they never met a criminal they didn't love. They never met a dictator they didn't love. And they never met a baby they didn't want to kill. So anyway, they're going to get these $3 million worth of aid, but it's going to go directly through the church to prevent, as much as possible, government entities from siphoning money off the top. And this is going to be food aid and medical aid primarily. So, hey, there's the good news. Meanwhile, Donald Trump did something that was completely ridiculous. He invited up Chuck Schumer to the White House. Now, granted, the intent of this meeting was to discuss why we're withholding money for the Gateway Tunnel project in New York, which was going to fund a lot of organized crime and other Democrats, in addition to possibly building a tunnel. But he did that in response to up Chuck Schumer doing the shutdown of the government. The Schumer shutdown, of course, was a big deal, and it cost a lot of people a lot of money. But the good news is it also exposed the fact that there were some 60% of the people getting food stamp aid that were not American citizens. So this tunnel has a whopping $16 billion price tag, and of course that's ideally formed in order to put Democrat pockets full of money. Had Schumer solely focused his attention on that matter, it'd be an appropriate exchange between public officials, but why miss an opportunity to talk about government-funded health care and ICE? Schumer also made a plea for Obamacare tax credits. He defended the illegal aliens that are here. His office put out a statement that said, Leader Schumer told the president ICE raids are terrorizing the communities. And of course they are. They're terrorizing the communities because these communities in many states, including Minnesota, are so full of illegal alien thugs and thieves that are robbing Americans blind that they are terrified because they don't want this being exposed. In reaction to 37-year-old Renee Good, who was bad and rammed the ICE agent with her stomach, causing him significant internal bleeding, or rammed the ICE agent with her vehicle, causing him significant internal bleeding, Schumer said, "This is horrific. It's like a punch in the stomach. We should not have ICE agents out there trying to enforce the law. They're not needed. We like this theft." Meanwhile, Schumer continued to berate Trump with a $38 trillion national debt. This is a serious problem, and Schumer apparently has a strange set of priorities. We desperately need to spend money on the American people. But Schumer said we don't need ICE to keep those same people safe by letting them apprehend the illegal aliens that are robbing them blind, many of which are convicted murderers and child abusers. Schumer insists on spending money. Why not spend it on the agenda that 77 million people voted for in the last election? The 2026 midterms are soon going to be upon us. There's no question that Republicans are going to win in a landslide. We're going to increase our lead in the Congress and the House of Representatives. We're going to increase our lead in the Senate. And Donald Trump's approval numbers continue to go up. But you know what really irks me is I'm a veteran, and there are so many veterans that have great needs. Many of them are homeless. And all of this money is going to Somalia, and a lot of it's going to finance Al-Shabaab, which is a Christian-hating or Muslim organization. I'm sick of it. And I think Chuck Schumer could do better. Of course, with all the garbage going on up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, it's good to know that their government has finally gotten their priorities in order. As the chaos continues to unfold, as the ICE officers continue to arrest hardened criminals, murderers, and rapists, the enforcement officers are causing city officials a little bit of tension. So the city officials are offering healing circles, and this is the best part, they're getting baby therapy goats. That's right. In an email screenshotted and uploaded to X, Minneapolis City Attorney Kristen Anderson announced that the healing circle is going to be provided as a quiet and supportive environment for city officials to allow them to have connection and presence. And they're going to have baby goats. These little therapy animals are there to make these people feel better about themselves. Town Hall columnist Dustin Grage, who posted the screenshot, added, "No, seriously, this is not parody. This is Minneapolis." It does seem like parody. It's almost like it was written for an episode of Parks and Recreation or South Park, but rather, this is someone who clearly has been living off the public dollar and is just having a horrible crisis. After Renee Good's killing, of course, Renee was very bad. She was connected to a lot of leftist subversive groups, and she left her husband and 3 kids so that she could fulfill her personal physical desires with her girlfriend. Be mindful these officers have had a hard enough time apprehending these convicted pedophiles and murderers with all of the droves of leftists that are standing in their way. Democrat officials like Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey, both absolute criminals that have been skimming off the top of this for a long time. But Walz called it a state confrontation with federal government a war. Now, Frey is downplaying the injuries of the officer that Miss Good tried to run over, who, by the way, is currently in hiding right now because they have doxxed him, and he and his family are seriously worried that these criminals may come after him. You cannot overlook the accusations of fraud that grow more credible by the day, thanks to YouTuber Nick Shirley and his initial investigation, where in one day he found over $10 million of wasted money going to child care centers that had no children. That's why we had the joke, the reason that Donald Trump decided to go after Maduro is because it's easier to go to a foreign country and extricate a dictator and bring him back to the United States to face justice than it is to find a child in a Somali child care center. So anyway, they're saying up there the priority needs to be healing. And we need therapy animals for all of these government employees, some of which have clocked out and proceeded to harass ICE, by the way. The responsibility of the more labor-intensive existence would subsequently turn a group of indigent indigent urban radicals into functioning members of society with an entirely different perspective of life. Oh well, therapy goes. Ketanji Brown Jackson, first of all, she is the first Supreme Court justice ever to be placed on the Supreme Court that could not tell you what a woman is. Now, some people would say she's the first woman ever put on the Supreme Court, or first black woman ever put on the Supreme Court, but the truth is, she's really not black, she's brown, and secondly, she doesn't know what a woman is, so I'm not sure if that constitutes. But one of the arguments that was made here recently, Hashim Mupan, arguing on behalf of the United States in an amicus curiae manner supporting Idaho, laid out his opening statements that the Idaho law is reasonably tailored, regardless of whether it is perfectly tailored, to apply to any subset of men. And states are not required to redefine sex or monitor testosterone levels of female athletes. Tailoring in constitutional laws, effectively making the law broad or narrow depending on the level of scrutiny that a law is subject to under judicial review. A law subject to strict scrutiny, which involves a fundamental constitutional right, might have a greater need to be perfectly tailored than a law that does not follow under the purview of a bedrock constitutional right. So, there I explained to you what a Supreme Court justice did not learn in decades of schooling and work on the bench. Before Justice Jackson began her questioning, she asked how intermediate, not strict scrutiny was a reasonable fit for Idaho's law to prevent men from pretending to be women and then beating the hell out of women. So she said, I guess I'm still struggling to understand why the state would have to have perfectly tailored laws. I would think the state would just have to make exceptions where people can demonstrate that the justification that makes the state conduct constitutional doesn't apply to them. This is Ketanji Brown Jackson, folks. Does she belong in the Supreme Court? I say no. I say she should be removed forthwith. See you guys tomorrow on the Saturday show. You don't want to miss it. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.